Those Chatham County people, they don't give up. There is always someone who is going to try to steal your shine. This is a message to all the black folks in the world. And basically, what I want to say is there has been a lot of things going on as far as to hold us down for a very long time. And I look back even at my mom. She was an activist. She went to Washington, D.C. We had a problem here at our school, our high school, where they wanted everybody to take a competency test, and they were giving tests that didn't even have the things that most black kids were born and raised in. Back in the 60s, when I was born, racism was bad. But it was a subtle racism where people were just kind and cordial unless you stood up for something. And my mom stood up for something. She was from a town in Carthage, and her dad, Clay Clegg, had the first brand new car in that area. You want to know why? Because they held down black people. And even if you went and told them back then, when my mom was coming up, even before the 60s, they would have said you were crazy. See, this is the little dirty secret that keeps black people in their place. If you speak up about anything, you're crazy. I never forget the same stuff that my dad was going through, where his mail was diverted and he didn't know where it was going, at the same time that someone had taken over his mortgage and his bank account. I was out of state. My mom in the 70s would tell us, but she had 3 influential teenage children that were going to a public school where they're taught, no, the white people are the good folks, watching soap operas every day, living in the white world. Brady Bunch, Eight's Enough. Come to find out, each one of those dads that was playing in those series, one of them was a child molester. And several were homosexuals. But they was churning out these shows every week. General Hospital, where a girl gets raped by a man and then turns it into her husband. This is the sick, twisted world that, after going through all of that, came out in the 80s, trusting and believing everything that white people said. My mom, she pulled us away from the TV. And they did have a knob where you could turn the color down to black if something sensual or age inappropriate came on. Now you can't even do that. Now if you set your kids in front of a cartoon, anything just allowed to pop up. But that is the world we lived in. And they had their own way. Everybody stayed in their own little place. Past white people in the store. Hey, how you doing? Children, there were white kids that would come over our house. Because my mom treated everybody with kindness. She was the best mom I could ever had. But one of the things that she told me that they said to her when she went to have her last baby and she lost it, carried it 8 months, and went to an appointment at Mateasel's Clinic, an offshoot of Duke Medical Center, where they actually had research going on, which I just found that out. A boarding house, no less, that the nurse ran right over there in Pittsburgh. She comes back from that clinic, and I think it was a couple days later, she lost her baby. And one of the things my dad said was the nurse told him that that all these black people, they need to pay their bills for having these babies. But yet, there's no jobs that's paying a whole lot of money. I heard a doctor say the other day, black women, when you go in that hospital to have a baby, you better ask some questions. Don't care about what people think. Ask as many questions as you can. And if you don't get a good feeling about this doctor or whoever you're dealing with, you need to turn around and go back out the door. Because my grandmother, she was a midwife. Guess you could say a doctor. She had 9 kids. And she would have to leave those kids to go and stay with white women, black women for 2 or 3 weeks when it was comes close to time for them to have that baby. She was as humble and as peaceful as you ever want to see. Never raised her voice to anybody. Raised my dad, he was quiet and humble and peaceful. But a lot of times, quiet, humble, and peaceful allows people to walk over you. He was blessed because my Aunt Julia gave him land. She actually gave land to him, to the school. Actually, his was attached to school, and sometimes I wonder if that's why he had so much trouble with somebody trying to take over his mortgage in 2020 and through to 2022. He worked for the school system for 7 years, the high school and the elementary. And when I came back in to take care of him and applied for maybe a pension or tried to find out, they didn't give him anything. He went in the military. But it was as the war broke, they didn't give him anything. I applied to CAP 3 times. It was during the COVID, but there's no excuse. His doctor sent paperwork to apply for CAP, which is, I guess it's through Medicaid. So basically, I was taking care of my dad and trying to stretch what budget he had because I came in from Sioux Falls because I had moved up there. And one of the things I will never do is apply for any benefit as far as housing through any service. Never will do it again. And I'm not even going to go there. The more I look at how my mom went through the same thing my dad did, and she was raised by her dad. Her dad always had enough money. He drove a bulldozer back in the 40s. That's why he had his own his own car and would be taking people, black people, giving them rides, as well as my dad. And so when she moved to this little town where I live in North Carolina, her lifestyle was totally different. She said when she came here, she just could not believe how racist and backwards these people were. My dad would be sitting in his yard, and his neighbor, a white man, Glenn Stinson, would come over and sit down and talk to the black folks because they would come culminate with at his house. He said some white man would come over there and talk all kinds of script. You're a nigger lover. You're a nigger lover. Black people do not tell this stuff. Sometimes I wish my parents had told me before I was older. And then you got ways when my mom started speaking up and went with Gene Sharp up to Chatham Central High School to see if they could stop that competency test, which was nothing but the same thing as redlining black people. Competency tests they was given to black people before we had just integrated in the 60s. And so my mom would go with Gene Sharp to Washington, D.C. to picket about the apartheid. It was bad. I do believe that was probably around in the 70s because I was born in the 60s. And after that, see, this is the first time I kind of thought and just put two and two together. After that, it was on and popping. Her pay wasn't right at Chatham Central. Her and my dad worked at a high school. And so she called Perry Harrison. Big mistake. I'm 4 years old. I was out in the yard when they sent someone over. Back then, at least they'd send somebody over to get enough information to retaliate on you. That's what they would do. Mom was young, very kind. She was the best mom you could ever have. But by the time the 70s came, her mail was being diverted. And she was trying to figure out what was going on with that. We'd leave home, stuff be taken. All it was an attempt to get you upset about something so that you would be totally discredited in some kind of way. And here we are in 2023. I have been through repeated hacking of my banking account. I have had my pay held. Matter of fact, Uber is still, my pay is still there. I just gave up. While I was taking care of my dad, I worked for DoorDash. Somebody hacked into my DoorDash. They said, this sorry son of a gun hacked in it, changed one letter in my email, and that came from the tech support. So I couldn't get my pay. I left that alone. Here we are in 2023. I have driven all my life. I have no points on my license, although during the time that I was trying to help my dad somebody had put on my license that I had tickets in South Carolina. Never had tickets in South Carolina at all. I had to call the insurance commissioner. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But financially, this has caused me a lot of having a backup plan, number one. Always have to have a backup plan. And this last one, it was a doozy. It was a doozy. Because my entire paycheck for 2 weeks almost looked like it just reversed. I still haven't seen it to today. 5 weeks ago. The more I look back on this thing, and I look at this Israel thing that's going on, the more I look at this thing, there's a whole lot of stuff we as Black people don't know. Because if you're going to lie, and you're going to keep your money flowing by lying, the best thing to do is to do what you do to anybody who's going to speak up about anything. Even if it causes them all kinds of problems. I look at these people, they're over there fighting folks where it was their land. I shouldn't even go into that because they probably won't even post this video. These secrets. We're only as sick as our secrets. We got a lot of secrets. Not we. But when it comes down to it, if you in the way, when these folks all over the world wake up to what's been going on, why they money, and nobody really talks about it on YouTube because everybody's in control of all the media, social media. You best believe it. You just gonna suffer in silence.